Imagine you're a project manager and you have a project with your analyst, Anthony, who's supposed to get you a draft of a report done and ready for you to review sometime soon. But Anthony has a little bit of a reputation for himself of being a slowpoke. So you want to go and ask him when he's going to have that draft ready for you. But because of his reputation of being slow, people are asking him all the time, when are you going to get this done? When am I going to expect that to be delivered to me? Blah, blah, blah. And so he has a tendency to get defensive. So your challenge is to go ask him when you can expect this draft without making him defensive, but still getting a proper answer. How do you do it? Do, 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 do. So what if I told you have the same situation, you're expecting the draft report, but instead of Anthony, who's the analyst working under you, you need to ask the CEO, who's supposed to review the draft and then get it back to you? How would you ask him? What if, all right, what if, stay with me now. What if I told you that the approach for asking Anthony and asking the CEO, let's call him Bill, what if I told you that approach is the same? You would ask them in the same way. Yeah, you didn't see that coming, did you? Yeah, now while you think about that, I'm going to cue up the theme song. Welcome to all the bad bitches. I know that there have been a lot of new baddies who found this podcast lately, so hello. I know I had no episode last week. Thank you to all of you for bearing with me while I was on vacation. Actually, it's really weird to talk about this because I'm recording this before I even go on vacation, but it's going to be released after I come back. But anyway, thank you so much for your understanding. I hope I had a great time. I'm going to speak for myself, for future Neeki. I had a great time. It was amazing. I am so tanned and the food was so good. Oh my God, it was great. I hope all of you get a chance to visit Greece because I loved it. And it was my second time going. So I didn't think I would go back so soon because the last time I went to Athens was last year. So it was amazing. Really weird talking about something that hasn't happened yet. But I'm putting it out in the universe so that hopefully when I come back, I actually have this exact thing to say about it. I think, you know what would be fun? I'm going to do my old intro because I don't know at what point I just stopped doing an intro, but like I literally just forgot to do it. So let's do it. Okay, ready? Hey everyone, welcome to the baddest bitch in the building. I am your host, Neeki. I am the baddest bitch in the building, not to be confused with you, who is also the baddest bitch in the building. But listen, I have a new part to my intro because I figured it's time for a little update. So, ready? Okay, here we go. Whew, I'm excited. I used to work in the corporate world. I am a former sustainability consultant. I have sat in boardrooms with some of the most influential people running the biggest companies in the country. And I've also worked in a very toxic workplace where I was exposed to the worst of human nature. And all of these experiences have enabled me to really study and understand what makes women successful and what holds them back. So this is a podcast about how we can use the patriarchy's loopholes to our advantage while using elements of human nature, psychology, philosophy, history, political strategy, military strategy, and everything in between so that we can learn how to navigate this deeply unfair misogynistic world. All right, so that was my new intro. I hope you liked it. I just did it on the spot, so I might have to write it down and then do it in the next episode and every episode from now until I die. Okay, so speaking of political and military strategy, that's actually what we're talking about today. So what I'm about to tell you right now is going to sound made up, but this is literally how I made this episode. I have a brochure from the FBI on my desk that I printed out and I used as the main source of reference for this episode. If you were to tell me like 3 years ago that I'm going to have a podcast and I'm going to use information and materials from the FBI to teach women how to navigate the world, I would think, actually, I would be like so excited. So, yeah, this is it. This is my dream come true. So, yeah, today we are going to talk about a strategy that is literally used by people gathering intelligence. Okay. Spies. I'm so fucking excited. And the strategy in particular that I'm talking about is called elicitation. And I bet the dude who wrote this brochure did not think for 1 second, not in a million years, that someone's going to come along and use this information to try to help women get ahead in a male dominated world. Like, this guy's probably like shaking in his boots right now. So, let me grab my brochure. Hold on 1 second. All right, I got my brochure here. Let's read what the definition of elicitation is. The strategic use of conversation to extract information from people without giving them the feeling that they are being interrogated. RIP to the chicks that's dying to be me. Y'all thought I was done with that tick? Still going strong. So that is the definition of elicitation. And basically, in laywomen's terms, elicitation is a method of extracting information from someone without them realizing it by using statements instead of questions. And it operates in a way that doesn't make our brains think that we are actually being interrogated. So it doesn't set off any alarm bells, because when we're not being asked questions, we're not under the suspicion that someone is interrogating us or trying to probe for information. So the person is completely unaware and at ease and likely to divulge information that you need. Okay? And you might be wondering, okay, great. This is great information. What does that have to do with navigating through this butt crack world? So, if you remember my episode with Daniel Pillai, the CEO of Langton PR, that was back in April, he said something that really resonates with me. He said,
What is patriarchy, anyways, other than just a bunch of dumb guys who just think they're everything? Please.
and when he said that, I'm like, this guy just boiled down an entire social, political, and economic system in one sentence and made it sound like a joke. And I fucking loved it. Because that's exactly what it is. This system is hanging on by a thread, okay? Because it is entirely based on ego and insecurity. I've said this in an episode that I think I deleted from last year because I got icked out at myself. And in that episode, I said, misogyny has nothing to do with women. Misogyny has to do with men because they are envious of women. Remember that they have Venus envy. We have something that they don't have. Not only a uterus, but we also have beauty that they don't have. Like, have you stepped outside of your house and seen the receding hairline pandemic that we're in? Not great. We have not only beauty, but we're able to leverage that beauty. We have control over our lust. We're not slaves to our lust. We are creators. Like, when I say being a woman is the highest form of being, like, I am not exaggerating. It is literally the highest form of being. So a system based on insecurity is a system that is literally hanging on by a thread. The male ego, it's really fragile. It's like a little baby. It's a little baby because it's based on, there are some biological elements to it, but there's also a lot of social elements to what goes into someone's ego, especially men who think that they are alpha and they have the biggest dick in the room. Not to be confused with the baddest bitch in the building. There's a lot of socialization behind these insecurities that a lot of alpha men have. If you listen to my episode on seduction, that's Law 20, I go through a lot of ways that men are actually adversely affected by the patriarchy. But going back to their egos, it's very fragile. It's fragile. It's based on this sense of having to prove yourself to people. It's based on a sense of perceived superiority, but underlying that superiority, like just beneath the surface, is a sense of inferiority, is a sense that I have to prove myself and I have to go out of my way to show everybody how strong, how capable, how smart, how alpha I am. And there's this really strong sense of competition, fear of rejection, and pressure to perform. So going back to what Daniel said, literally, what is patriarchy besides a bunch of dumb guys who think they're better than everyone? And the thing is, they don't even think they're better than everyone. They just give the perception that they're better than everyone because deep down they are insecure. Okay? Now, that's one element of it. The other element of it is that a lot of time as women, we encounter gatekeepers. That's the glass ceiling, for example. It's basically institutionalized gatekeeping. So the opportunities, the information, the things that would help us advance are being gatekept. And since I'm on the wave of referencing previous episodes, my episode with Abigail, the girl with the list, where we're talking about being child free, something that we discuss in that episode is that there's a lot of information that is kept from women about our reproductive health, about the dangers of pregnancy, and about the actual experience of having a child that's withheld from us. So there's a lot of gatekeeping and withholding of information that happens in this system. One of the ways to circumvent that ego and circumvent the gatekeepers is by using the method of elicitation. This is really important for women because it operates based on human psychology and human nature. And no matter what kind of system, whether it's patriarchy, whether it's something else, whatever kind of system is in place, human nature doesn't change. Psychology doesn't change. So it doesn't matter what's happening on the outside, in the outside world. Inside people's head, we have a clear view as to what's going on inside people's head, inside the processes that happen and the ways that we can use those processes to bypass the gatekeeping. Does that make sense? Let's you know what, I'm gonna pause here so that we can absorb this information. So let's go back to the example I was talking about at the beginning of this episode with your analyst, Anthony, and with the CEO, Bill. How did you think to yourself that you would go to Anthony and ask when he's going to deliver that draft report to you? If you thought to yourself, oh, I'll go to him, I'll be friendly, I'll start off with some small talk, ask him how his workload is going, ask him how his day is going, warming him up a little bit, and then I'm going to ask him in a nice way, in a friendly way, without putting any pressure on him. I would say, hey, no pressure, no worries or anything. I just wanted to know when I can expect the draft report. If your answer was something like that, then I am so glad you are listening to this episode because we need to work on the elicitation, babes. We got to work on that. What about with the CEO? If you thought to yourself that you'd go with a similar approach, friendliness, maybe a little bit more deferential and a little bit more professional and respectful, but still ask the same thing. Yeah, we need to talk about this, okay? And listen, we're not judging. There's no judgment, no tea, no shade, no pink lemonade. But this points to a very fundamental way that we have been socialized, which is that if we ask nicely and if we're polite and show respect, then we will get what we want. And if we don't get what we want, it means we didn't deserve it. Oh my God. What did I tell you in law, whatever number it was? Act like a winner before you even won. We're not asking for permission. We're not asking for things to be given to us. We don't wait for power. We don't wait for influence because power is not given. Influence is not given. Information is not given. We live in a system that is based on gatekeeping. So why are you going around asking for permission? Why do we think that if we just ask nicely, things are going to happen for us? They are not going to happen for us. They're just going to set ourselves up for people to walk all over us and for people to continue gatekeeping that kind of information that we want. I am Zen. I am not having a mental breakdown. I am not glitching. I am not going to crash out. I am Zen. I am the baddest bitch in the motherfucking building. I am Zen. We need to take this mistaken belief, this superstition that if I ask nicely, and if I ask for permission, just that asking, we need to get rid of that. Okay. That is a butt crack way of going around a butt crack world. And two butt cracks don't make a right. They don't make a right crack. Clearly, there's another way that we have to go about it. Okay. Because we've asked all our lives. We've asked all our lives. You've probably asked for a raise. You've asked for a promotion. You've asked for respect. You've asked for somebody to pull their weight. You've asked for somebody to be there for you when they haven't. And how's that worked out for you? Because when the revolution comes, asking is not going to get you anywhere. So, elicitation. There are 13 techniques of elicitation. There's 13 ways that you can do this. But in those 13, there are 5 that are useful for our purposes. Not to say that the other 8 aren't. They're pretty interesting and obviously they could be used in different contexts, but there are 5 in particular that are useful when we're navigating through the world of egos and gatekeepers. Okay? The first one, and I'm going to start with this one because it's, in my opinion, one of the best ways to do it. Deliberate false statements. So the definition of this is say something wrong in the hopes that the person will correct your statement with true information. This works on that fundamental need that people have to correct others. This is why men love mansplaining. So when you give them a false statement that they hear and they're like, oh my God, I have to correct this, that is a great way to get information from them. So going back to my example with Anthony or Bill, instead of asking them, when can I expect this draft? You give them a false assumption. You say, hey, I just told, let's say the director who's overseeing the whole project, who's your boss. Let's call her Angelina, because somebody left me a hate comment on Instagram saying I look like the Kmart version of Angelina Jolie. And that fed my ego because she's super hot. So let's call her Angelina. So you go to Anthony and say, hey, Angelina just came by my desk asking about an update for the project. And I told her that it seems like you're going to be done with the draft and you're going to send it over to me by tomorrow. Was I way off or is that reasonable? Something like that. And you probably know in your head that tomorrow is literally impossible. And he'll be like, oh, no. Tomorrow's not going to work, but I think by Friday I can get it to you. And let's say today is like Wednesday. Great. There you go. Now you got the information that you need. And I know technically there was a question in there. I asked if I was way off or whatever, but the question is not related to the actual piece of information you're trying to get, right? And the same approach can go for the CEO. You might adjust your tone a little bit to be more professional or more respectful, depending on what kind of dynamic you have in your workplace, but you can still absolutely use that. That's why I said that the approach is basically the same with your employee or the most senior person in the company, because the psychology is the same. So that's the deliberate false statements approach. The next approach is bracketing. So this means you provide a high and low estimate in order to entice a more specific number. For example, you go to Anthony and you say, let's assume it's Monday. Okay, let's assume it's Monday. You go to Anthony and you say, hey, I was just updating the work back schedule for this project, and I put down that you're going to get back to me around Wednesday or sometime by end of next week. What do you think? And let's say that what you really want is to get it by the end of this week. So you've given a very conservative estimate, which is Wednesday, 2 days from now. And then you've given a very liberal estimate, which is end of next week. And what he's going to do is, well, he's going to think, okay, Wednesday is pretty impossible. I can't do this in 2 days. And end of next week, that's like a week and a half, almost 2 weeks away. He's going to come back and say, I can get it to you by end of this week or early next week, Friday or Monday. And because you've also given this really big range, that's going to push them to zoom in and be a bit more specific. The next technique is called Can You Top This? I love this name. So in this one, you say, RIP to the chicks that's dying to be me. Okay, I swear to God, that was the last time, I promise. So Can You Top This is telling an extreme story in hopes that the person will want to top it. This is very much ego driven. So, for example, you go to Anthony or Bill and you say, hey, I was just updating the work back schedule for this project. And usually with projects like this, it takes about 3 to 4 days to get the draft done. So I put down that you're going to send it to me by sometime Thursday or Friday. So if today's Monday and you said that it normally takes 3 to 4 days, then you should expect it by Thursday or Friday. What you could do, if you know that this person is very competitive, you can say, 3 to 4 days. But, I think that you might need a little bit more time than that. So maybe we can say Monday, and that might trigger their competitiveness and their ego to be like, oh, no, I can get it to you by Thursday. So it helps to know what makes this person tick so that you can appeal to their sense of urgency or competitiveness or anything like that that might help you. All right, you see where we're going with this? Next technique is flattery. This one is pretty self-explanatory. It's using praise to coax a person into providing information. And the example that they give in this brochure is, I bet you are the key person in designing this new product. The two words, I bet, are really effective ways of starting off the sentence. Funny sidebar. The reason I'm actually doing this episode is I had an entirely different episode written and I was pretty much ready to record it. And I was just talking to my dad and he was like, what's the latest episode you're writing? And I told him the topic. I'm keeping it secret because I'm going to eventually do an episode on that. And he's like, what about elicitation? I think that'll be a really good episode to do. And I was like, well, shite. So I scrapped that whole episode, actually didn't even rewrite, I just wrote a whole new episode on elicitation. And now we're here. Okay, so why was I talking about this? Okay, whatever, I forgot. Anyway, what were we talking about? Flattery. Oh, yeah. Okay, I remember now. So the reason my dad actually recommended I do this episode is because he follows this I think he's a former CIA agent, and now he's like this behavioral expert who does a lot of writes books and creates content around this sort of stuff. And he showed me some of his resources, and that guy, his name is Chase Hughes. I'll put his info in the show notes. Chase Hughes. And he talks about how saying I bet before going on with the rest of your sentence is a really good way of getting people to talk and share and stroke their egos and flatter them. So keep that in mind, okay? Now, going back to our example with Anthony, let's say you go up to his desk and say this. Hey, I was just updating the work back schedule, and usually with projects like this, it takes about a week to get the draft done. But I work with you before. I've seen the way that you deliver things ahead of schedule, and I bet you can get this done in 3 to 4 days, right? Something like that. This strategy might not work, for example, with the CEO. It might be a little bit weird in that context. So know your audience. And this approach, the flattery approach, it can also be layered with other approaches. And you can use this as a follow-up to something that was said before. So if somebody says something to you, you can follow it up by saying, oh, I bet that was really difficult, or I bet that was really rewarding, or I bet that was blah, 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 blah. Whatever it is that could fit that statement. But don't sleep on I bet, all right? Don't sleep on it. Oh, on the note of I bet, another thing that you can do as a follow-up is using disbelief. So let's say that you told Anthony, hey, I was just updating the work back schedule. Usually with projects like this, it takes about a week to get it done. So I've put down that you're going to get this done by Friday and send it over to me. Is that reasonable? And he's like, oh no, I'll get it to you by Wednesday. And you're like, oh my God, really? That's amazing. So with that disbelief, obviously, this is not that big of a deal. You're going to be like, oh my God, that's all. Oh, my panties are on the floor. No. But adding that disbelief as a follow-up gets people to talk more because they're like, oh my God, she's so impressed. I didn't know this was that impressive. And then they're going to give you more information. And if we've talked about anything on this podcast, is that you can get so much done when you make people feel good about themselves. Oh my God. Now, the last approach among the 13 that can be used for our purposes is feigned ignorance. Pretending to be ignorant of a topic in order to exploit the person's tendency to educate. This is acting dumb. I've done a whole episode on this. It was law 8. So I'm not going to go into detail about it here, but that is a form of elicitation, which I learned putting this episode together. This is an FBI approved method of interacting with people, okay? And one of you girlies actually messaged me a little while ago asking if I can provide some counter arguments for the things that I say, just so that you're ready to clap back if somebody says, oh, well, why are you doing this? Or, that's not equality, or blah, 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 blah. And I thought that's a really great suggestion. Anytime I get a message from one of you asking for me to incorporate something into the episodes, I put them in a Google Doc. I have a list. And when I'm writing my episodes, I have that Google Doc open and I refer to it and see if I can like pull anything in if it's relevant. So this one, I feel like I could probably do it with any episode, but y'all know my episodes have been so long lately. Oh my God, I am so sorry, but we gotta do what we gotta do. So I'm actually not that sorry, but listen, in this case for elicitation, don't tell on yourselves. Don't go around telling people this is what I'm doing and, telling your friends or telling other coworkers or whoever it is that you're doing this. A lot of the stuff that we do has to be covert, because, FBI, but it has to be a little bit covert because a lot of people don't understand this. And a lot of people are very much conditioned in the way that we once were, or in the way that a lot of women are, right? Through no fault of their own. So it is a little bit difficult to communicate these things to some people, especially when they're not on the same wavelength as you. But I like to use analogies. And the analogy I use all the time is the analogy of playing a board game with your cousins. I don't know. I grew up playing a lot of board games with my brother and my cousins. And there's always some motherfucker who was cheating, usually my brother. So that analogy, I think, puts a lot of things in perspective by saying that, if you're playing a board game and everybody is cheating except for you, you're never going to get ahead. The rules are rigged. The rules hold no value. The rules mean nothing. And if you keep playing by them, you're just going to, the only thing you're going to guarantee is that you're going to lose. And that is exactly how the world is set up. So we cannot go around the world playing by the rules that have been put in place for us to follow them so that we can fail. And in the context of elicitation, if somebody says, well, this is manipulative or this is deceptive, I'm so sorry. You were going to ask that person for this information anyway. You were going to go to Anthony, you were going to go to Bill and ask when they were going to give you that report. And you were probably not going to get a good answer, or you were going to make them defensive. So you were going to ask for that information anyway. You might as well ask for it in a more effective way that's going to get you an answer, and that's not going to put that person on edge or make them defensive. You know the saying, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. It's what you say, and it's how you say it, and it's how you make the person feel, and it's the emotions you evoke when you are talking to that person. So it is a lot more than just how you say it. All right. And on that note, let's talk about some exceptions. There really aren't many exceptions to this law. Obviously, your context matters. Are you going to use this approach with your friends or with your family? Maybe, maybe not. Remember that we are goal oriented. So when you're using this approach, you have a goal in mind and you are loyal to that goal, to that outcome. Okay? If you're going to go ask your friend if they want to meet you for dinner, you're not going to use elicitation. You're just going to ask them straight up. So don't waste your energy and don't use this in cases where you don't need to use it. And you never want to come across as kissing ass or sucking the proverbial dick, so to speak. You want it to come across as genuine, and it should be genuine because you're loyal to that outcome, right? You have the goal that's driving you. You want to know when you're going to get that draft report, for example, so you can get reviewing on it and deliver the project on time. And remember to use what you know about that person, like their sense of competitiveness or whatever other elements of their ego that you can leverage so that you can make this more personalized and more effective. All right. And this is not manipulative, remember, because you were going to go and ask for that information anyways. And if you're thinking, oh my god, I don't want to play games, blah blah blah, I don't think any of you baddies who are listening at this point have that mindset. So I'm not even gonna entertain the I don't want to play games argument. Like, no. So, my bad bitch FBI operatives, we've reached the end of today's episode. If I'm able to edit this to under 30 minutes, then I have succeeded in my goal. So, with that, I'm just gonna say thank you for tuning into another episode. If you haven't subscribed to the Baddie Brief yet, the link is in the show notes. And make sure to give the podcast a 5-star rating if you are a bad bitch who likes to use FBI techniques to get ahead in this butt crack world. All right, until next time, stay bad. Love you. Bye.